Another big thing that um, was done was to really go after a very, very rigorous and serious literacy program in the early grades. And if there's like three charts in this presentation I want you to just burn in your memory, this is the first one, okay? This is a study done by the Annie Casey Foundation that did a very long-term cohort study of students. And when they looked at 19-year-old dropouts, as they've been following these kids all the way, since kindergarten, right? You can go and look at the kids who are 19 years old and have dropped out of school, and go back and, wow, what was going on with them in their early grades, okay? Turns out only 11% of kids who could read that were at the appropriate level of reading for a third grader, only 11% of dropouts are those. All the rest of them are kids that have already, were struggling with reading early, okay? Basically what happens to kids, okay, is that you have a literacy window, right? Your brain is wired to learn how to read at a young age, okay? It's very similar to the neurology of learning a foreign language, right? Christy and I could try to study Danish now, right? But it's not going to work out for us very well, at least not me. Maybe Christy could do it, right? I will never be a fluent Danish speaker because I would be trying to learn it as a 45-year-old, right? In the same way, right, it's not impossible to become a good reader past that window of opportunity, but it becomes extraordinarily difficult, okay? Kids who don't learn how to read, usually by the end of the third grade, right, are sent on into the rest of the system, right? You don't have the basic skills required to be a fourth grader, but that's okay. You'll catch up, we hope, right? You're an illiterate third grader who's made into an illiterate fourth grader, an illiterate fifth grader, a sixth grader, seventh grader, right? You're a seventh grader sitting in your science classroom with a science book you can't read. One way to, actually, I think the most accurate way to think about this is that grade level material keeps going up, and you can't go with it, okay? These kids will describe themselves as bored, they become frustrated, and they actually know that they've been kind of given the short end of the stick. They don't know why. They often become disruptive, discipline problems. They never see themselves going to college. They start to wonder, what am I doing here, right? They're getting passing grades, but they understand that this is a farce, right? They may not be able to read very well, but that doesn't mean they can't figure that out. It's blindingly obvious, okay? And these kids start dropping out of school in large numbers starting in the 8th grade. And your dropout pipeline is built back in K-3, okay? This is happening in every state in this country, and it is a disgrace. And one of the key Florida reforms was to do something about it, okay? These are other indicators about how important it is to get you reading early. The Florida early literacy strategy was multifaceted. There is one element that gets more attention than anything else, but let me emphasize now that there was a whole lot of things done, okay? The thing that gets the most attention is a retention policy, okay? The bottom line is that there's screening, there's retraining of teachers, there's family literacy plans drawn up for kids, there's early testings, there's all this stuff, okay? But the bottom line is, in Florida, is that after multiple attempts with different tests and all these other sort of things, the bottom line is that you have to show us some progress towards becoming a literate reader. You don't even have to be proficient, but there has to be some level of achievement there. And if not, the default becomes that you will be retained back in third grade, okay? And that doesn't mean that they're going to throw you back into the same classroom that didn't work out for you the first time. There's extra help. There's all these sorts of things, okay? And there are good cause exemptions on all these sort of things. But the default for a child that has not mastered these critical skills at the developmentally appropriate age, right, is that they will be retained in third grade. This is a very, very difficult and controversial policy at the time. So the way they measured this was that these are basically the same achievement levels that Christy showed you earlier. At Florida FCAT has 5 achievement levels. And basically what you needed to do, some way or another, whatever's test, is you needed to show FCAT 2. okay? That's it. You've got to show us FCAT 2. These are the good cause exemptions. Talk about those if you're interested later. Here's what happened, okay? I think this story is fascinating. If you look at, say, the first one, 2000, in the red chart, the red line there, 29% of the kids in Florida were scoring FCAT 1 in third grade reading. And let me translate that into a more visceral term. 29% of the students in Florida were utterly and completely illiterate. Were unable to read at all, okay? You see the first year of the policy, 2002, 2003, okay? 13.2% of the students are retained. Ouch. I believe that was an election, in Governor Bush's re-election year, right? So that takes some real courage to do something like that, okay? Main thing I want you to notice is the trend in both the red lines and the blue lines, okay? The percentage of kids being retained has been approximately cut in half, okay? And it's being cut in half because the percentage of kids ever scoring FCAT 1 in the first place is going down, right? Fewer kids being retained. Why? Because more kids are learning how to read in the first place, which is exactly how you want to stop retention, right? The goal is not retention. The goal is to get kids to learn how to read. And with that, I'll hand it back to Kristen.
That I wanted to make on that previous slide is you notice that we had in the first year when the policy was conceived, 29% of our students at achievement level 1, 5 achievement levels. Even if they were proportionately distributed, it's way over representation in achievement level 1. That's ridiculous. I mean, there wasn't an outcry about it yet in Florida. When the policy went into place, you can see that even before it was implemented, we had a 6% decrease in the percent of students in level 1. Just the threat of being retained caused a change of practice in the schools. So huge impact before it even went into effect. And as Dr. Ladner had said, as it went into effect, we saw that continuous decrease in the percent of achievement level 1 students too. So lots of strategies were in place to reduce that, but namely focusing more on K2, even though there wasn't assessments at those grades for the state level, teachers were being more serious about K2 reading.